If you didn't like it, don't say anything. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. So this is our time for our webinar. This is me and Paul presenting today, having our, not 15 minutes of fame, having our Andy Warhol moment of maybe, maybe 90 minutes of fame. And here's where we're going. We want to talk to you about getting your students ready for online learning. And the reason we want to do that, and some of the reasons we want to do that, is because the online medium tends to create, like, more problems. Look at what we had today. We have 2 people who couldn't connect their audio, 2 other people who couldn't connect their video, other people could not log in, some people needed a passcode, other people didn't have a passcode. So there's all kinds of problems that can go and usually will go wrong. This is Murphy's Law in polite words. And also, when you're online, somehow activities and tasks may take longer to set up because you're not face-to-face, you're not in direct visual contact with your learners. Eye contact is not available to you. You can't see the look of despair on some students' eyes who are lost, and you can very quickly nip over and help them. You need to do that because you need everyone to have a chance to talk in your lessons, not just some people to take over. And you want to create a positive, productive atmosphere where people go away with a good feeling and having the idea that they've learned something from you. Activities, I think I repeated that. I apologize. I will delete that from the final slide, I promise. And also, finally, to create a team spirit and a collaborative atmosphere. People come to us to learn in groups because humans are social creatures, and they come to work in classes because we learn in groups. We learn, for example, from our family, first of all. That's our first social group. We go to school and we learn in a group. So the pandemic created a lot of isolation, but still it's great to be able to work with classes of individuals online. Obviously, a lot of the things that I'm saying apply to individual instruction. Somebody's making a lot of noise outside my window. I hope you cannot hear it.
No, we can't.
No, good, okay, because it's really annoying me, but I will try to ignore it. But it's quite important, both in the offline and the online class, to create a very positive and encouraging classroom atmosphere, to make people feel good about themselves and about each other, and to help them to feel good about their learning. So creating a team spirit and a collaborative atmosphere will go a long way towards this. All this is obviously leading to having more motivated, more focused, more engaged learners. We cannot guarantee that people will be successful in their learning, but the consensus amongst all colleagues is that if you have people who are happy, who enjoy their classes, who enjoy their lessons, it's much more likely that they will get something out of them, whereas people who are miserable and motivated, afraid to talk, they will go away with a bad feeling in their stomach. They're going to learn less. I want to begin with the roadmap, and Paul is going to take over and give us some ideas of how to create a roadmap for your guiding steps, how to guide your students towards successful online learning. Paul, over to you.
Thank you. Let me take a big breath. There we go. That's made me a bit bigger and focused. As Annie Lennox has told us,
I'll change my
no, as Marissa mentioned, the importance of sort of mapping that journey, and this all comes down to planning, and it's something we do as teachers. I mean, that's why we write a lesson plan, because we map out what's going to happen in our 45, 50, 60-minute lessons. So what I'm suggesting here is we should do the same for the whole bigger experience. We can break that down into different areas. So there's the basic logistics we need to think about. And something that helps me is putting myself, so I tend to close my eyes and imagine I am the client, should we say, I am the student. What is it that I need at each and every step in order to help me do what I need to do, access the materials, click on the right link, be able to connect effectively, efficiently, and therefore, so what do I need to do even before the lesson begins? So we can divide that into like the logistics side of things. And I'm going to touch in a minute on some areas of those. If we move on to the next slide, Marissa, thank you very much. We'll look also at the pedagogical side of things. Obviously, there are digital competencies, and these are measured in the Common European Framework of Referencing. So, you know, you can have a look at what students need to be able to do and actually sort of relate that to their level as well. You know, I mean, say that at B1 level students digitally, their digital competence should be X, Y, and Z. This is what they should be able to do. What does that mean? It means we can write that into our curriculum as well, so we can plan that ahead. And I think that's very important, because that has a very big impact on not only what we're doing in the class, but also how. And I think we probably have seen lots of reports recently at the specific competencies that organizations, companies, businesses are looking for in their new and their future employees. So although we're teaching English, by doing so online, what we're doing is actually future-proofing our students for something much bigger. So it's not just English, it's a lot more than that. Now, a big responsibility for all of us, definitely, but we can plan. Okay, so we can include those specific measures. But as Marissa mentioned as well, there's something that we can't forget in all of this, and it has to be a constant thread through everything we do, which is the welfare and the well-being of ourselves as well as our students. If you move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what we can do is have a look at, for example, an acceptable user policy. Now, in face-to-face teaching, this was very often basically called the terms and conditions of contracting a course, or, and then within the classroom contract. So I think there are two levels of this. One is the institutional level, whereby when somebody says, listen, I want to pay for this course, I would like to do this course, well, fine, brilliant. But there are some minimal conditions in order to make the most and get the most out of this course. Then there are the, should we say, the agreed conditions that maybe the teacher comes to with the students as a group. So they're the classroom contract to say, listen, this is how we are going to agree to continue with the course. Why? Well, because every teacher, thank goodness, has their own teaching style and their own preferences of how to do things. Now, that teaching style and that, should we say, classroom contract has to come under the umbrella of the institutional acceptable user policy, the AUP. So here you can see an example of very typical AUPs on a very sort of individual teacher level, which appeared when we were all forced to move into emergency remote teaching. So it's like, okay, guys, this is what we need to agree to do. And I think these still are very valid. And they're light-hearted, you know, using the images, but also there's a serious point to them. And exactly as Marissa said, very easy to read for learners, so very clear. Yeah. So on a kind of individual student basis, it's very clear. If we move on to the next slide, we can see something from a more institutional point of view. So this is kind of, you know, the signing the contract type thing. And this is from a different school, a different center, different organization that is basically saying, okay, well, these are the things that we would expect you to do. Okay, otherwise that is probably not for you. And if we look at some of the points here, it's actually a very healthy perspective. So it's making sure that everybody in the room is there in a safe environment, free from any form of discrimination. And I think that's important, whether that be face-to-face or online, but definitely. The content being shared during the lessons has to be, well, measured carefully, making sure that it's safe for everyone. Little thing, it was interesting, Marissa suggested changing our profile names at the beginning of the session, and that's wonderful for students, especially those maybe teenagers who, you know, some of them enjoy taking on a different role and maybe come out of their shell by doing so. That's wonderful, but again, we need to make sure that those names are appropriate. I don't know about you, but I've had at least one example where a student has entered my classroom with a very inappropriate name. He blamed his elder brother from being in a different session. Well, that's possibly the case. So we need to be careful as well in that one. And obviously sharing personal information. Now, obviously, again, we need to make sure that we're always asking, that we have permission for sharing information. Again, if you have a look at this webinar at the beginning, Marissa, who definitely, as she says in the chat box there, wishes you were Annie Lennox, asked everybody's permission. If it were younger learners, we need to get that signed, obviously, from parents, as we know. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll come back a little bit to that permission and the personal information. Again, moving on to the more institutional kind of requirements of how students can, you know, behave in class. So, for example, let's look at their comfort. You know, are they comfortable? Do they have water if they need it? I mean, we would do this in a face-to-face classroom, especially if it were hot or if it were cold. So we kind of need to make sure that that's the case. For example, my students, if I see they're cold, I'll stop my class and say, listen, go get a blanket, go get a jacket, sit there in a whatever you need, because if they're cold or if they're excessively hot, if they're thirsty, they're not focused on my lesson. They're focused on their well-being at the moment. So my lessons can't be effective. Learning will not be as effective for them. So exactly, you know, Maslow is what Marissa is mentioning. It's that pyramid of needs. Well, we need to be aware of that in the online environment as much as we would be in a face-to-face environment. So let's make sure that's covered first, and then we can get to more effective, more efficient learning. The camera, as we mentioned, I think, remember communication, we all probably have heard that, you know, the percentages of communication in one study, it suggested 55% is just purely body language, visual. So the camera makes a big impact. I know many people prefer not to have the cameras on when they're in class. Personally, in my classrooms, I would say, listen, that I wouldn't allow you to walk into my classroom with a box over your whole body. And that's for different reasons. And I think this is touching upon the security of everybody in the room at the time. I'm not suggesting you all turn on your cameras now. Don't get me wrong, because this is a webinar, it's not a class. What I'm suggesting is, well, if a student enters the classroom, my classroom with other participants, I need to make sure that I can verify that person's identity. I need to know who they are for the safety of everybody else in that room, as well as my own safety. There's a digital, not physical safety element here. So if that person can turn on their microphone and say, hi, Paul, yeah, this is so-and-so, and I recognize the voice, I know who they are, but I'm having problems with my camera for technical reasons, or I'm in a place where I don't want you to see, or you shouldn't see the background for whatever reason, well, that's fine. Okay, I know who you are. Wonderful. But again, remember the communication aspect there is lost, especially if we're doing pronunciation. You know, you need to be able to see what the students are doing with their mouths. Yeah. So if you could move on, Marissa, that'd be wonderful. So again, we're having a look at the extended acceptable user policy as well. Yeah. So thinking about the device being used, obviously many people try to connect on their telephones. That's all right for a webinar when you're receiving, so it's more receptive. But when you're participating, PC is probably better, isn't it? Laptop. So we also need to make sure, and this is something part of my 2-3 minute tech check at the beginning of each lesson, to check that I'm not showing any personal information that I probably don't want to, and that the students with their cameras on are not either. That's the first thing I do in the first lesson, is I look at the backgrounds of each of my students, and I say, and I remember saying to one teenager, I said, listen, you have a photograph there of, you know, what looks like a family behind you. I imagine it's yours. Are you happy with sharing that? And she actually thought and went, well, no, actually, I don't want everybody seeing that I have 2 brothers and a sister and a dog yet, until I decide that I want to. Right, fine, okay, boom, here we go, picture down, and that's fine. So I think it's important, and I think we've all seen this on the news or on TV when people are being interviewed online. We're always looking at the background because, well, maybe it's just me, maybe me being the nosy one and then looking at people's backgrounds, but I'm always checking people's backgrounds thinking, oh my goodness, why didn't this person just turn around and do that before they came online, you know? So remember, because we can take screenshots and we need to make sure that that doesn't really happen for negative purposes. Okay. So if we're talking about being dressed appropriately as well, I think that's important. I mean, again, in my lessons, I've had people dressed in bathrobes and doing like placement tests in bathrobe. That made me feel a bit uncomfortable, to be honest, but hey, there we go. So I think that there needs to be that acceptable user policy. I think that's only fair for everybody involved. Yeah. So if we move on. Now, there's one way. So we think the first step is that, you know, acceptable user policy, even before the students walk into a classroom. Now, how do they access the classroom? Well, that's the next step in the process. Let's make it a smooth experience, that journey of accessing the online lessons. So, so this is an example of a school that has actually created a Google site, which with a Google account is free to make and quite easy to make as well. I mean, to be honest, if I can make a website using Google Sites, I think just about anybody can, right? So this is an example from a school where, as you see, that you have the photograph of the teacher's name. I've blocked out the teacher's name for obvious reasons, but it's welcoming. Now, the levels, as you can see, Advanced C1, PEP B1, First B2, are the different classes that they have. So the student comes in, logs onto their website, essentially, it's their site, and sees, oh, right, yes, my level is First B2, so that's my class. I click on that, automatically clicking on that image brings me to the Zoom meeting, because this particular school happen to use Zoom for their lessons. Wonderful. But then I have asynchronous material available, and that's all on the website. So if I scroll down on the website, I'll see Quizlet e-learning exam training options as well. So it's all on one place. This is kind of, let's call it a one-stop shop, although it's, you know, that's quite a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? So I tend to call these a hub. And if we move on, Yeah. If we move on to the next slide, I think
That's our
this
hub.
is, yeah, this is the hub we use on our CELTA courses, for example, and I know they're also used on our Delta courses, and it's just everything that a candidate will need all in one place. You don't have to go off here, there, and everywhere to go. No, just go to one place, and you have the Cambridge Moodle, where you get your asynchronous input from. You have the 2 different Zoom rooms, because you're teaching 2 different levels during the course. And you have the very, very useful CELTA wikis with lots of information that you're going to need for your course. Now, below that, there are lots of useful documents which you need for the course as well. So it's all together in one place. And as you can see at the top, you also have sections of observations, the assignments, recorded input sessions, and then sort of reference material as articles. So as you can see, what we're doing is just making life easier for that journey in order to, you know, for the student or the candidate in this case, in order to be able to access the lessons. So you see the way we're mapping the journey already, and we haven't even started teaching yet. So thinking about that process. So if we move on, Marissa, I think we've touched upon that idea of student and teacher well-being, and I think this is important. Now, the background that you see behind me it's a virtual background, yeah. Not because I don't want you to see my real background, it's actually very similar. The reason being because I've been teaching with this background for so long, I've actually reformed the office in which I am to make it look very similar to this. I've just become so used to it. But what I wanted to show you is it's quite easy to include a virtual background, and then you can have the mess.
I'm actually teaching from home today. So it's very important for me to just put a more professional background rather than my study at home. So I mean, a lot of you will be working from home and remote instruction. So it's quite neat. It's quite nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing is that you can play with your backgrounds. You can have different backgrounds and use them for teaching. Now, Zoom allows that in very simple, easy ways. But then there are other forms of doing the same. And therefore, you're using your background for pedagogical reasons. But then there's also that sort of, avoiding people being nosy if you don't want them to be. So let's have a look at some setups, because I think it's important to think about teacher and student well-being. And what we're going to look at next is a few teacher setups, their teaching areas, so their classrooms. There we go. Marissa's just turned into a typical angelic self. So if we move on to onto the next slide, Marissa, what we can see is this is a photograph of a teacher's teaching environment. Lovely, I would say. Have a look at on the left. I'm not going to go through all the ticks, all the positives there on the left-hand side. You can see the good things there, but these are the things to take into account. And as you can see, that would be a nice place to work. There's one little drawback, I would say, to that place and to this place is it's all sedentary. As you can probably tell, Marissa sat down, but I'm not. And I have a table which I did invest in because I work mainly from home, in which it's one of these tables that automatically go up and down according, like you just press a button and I'll be able to sit down. Then if I want to stand up, I can as well. I'm not going to name names because I'm not advertising these tables, but a quick online search and you'll find some. But there are other solutions which we're going to see in the moment, which I've used myself. So here we go. Look at that. You don't need to spend a lot of money on a table that moves up and down because you probably have an ironing board at home and it works exactly the same. The great thing about this is what? Well, nobody knows your laptop or your computer is on an ironing board because they can't see it. So it's wonderful. So it offers that that flexibility. The other thing, have a look at this setup. I think it's great. First of all, they're using a laptop So if there's a power cut in your house, it doesn't matter. You've got your autonomous power back up there. The lighting coming from a window onto your face is actually the best lighting you can have. I know everybody buys these rings now. I have one in front of me myself, but that's because I've got the window to my side and there's no way that I can turn my desk towards the window. But natural lighting is much better. Yeah, and you've got that perfect option to sit down or stand up, and maybe, you know, in the lulls between the lesson, do a little bit of ironing as well. Hey, you know, sort of multitasking. If we move on to the
maybe that, you know, kind of option.
yeah, be careful, be careful. So if we move on to the next slide, I think it's the final example here. We can see somewhat of a contrast, but look at it, you know, the setup is organized. Again, it's using what appears to be a tablet, but therefore has, you know, autonomous power in case of a power cut. It's cordless, so that means the teacher could move around their teaching environment and use their environment to help show, you know, in the past, I remember bringing Realia and having to get a taxi into my lessons because I was carrying so much Realia in just to show to my students. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. I just grab the camera and walk around my house showing it. You know, it saves my back as well. Okay, biggest issue I would suggest here is the chair. This is a hardback chair. There's no way in the world you would be able to comfortably teach for 5 hours sat in something like that. And this is something you need to think about, I think. So if the next slide, I think will kind of, okay, we've seen these online and you know, sort of health and safety, how best to sit and stand. And I think these things we need to take into account. The lighting, I think, Marissa, you're going to mention?
I was going to say that I very often have a problem with my students. I can't see their faces because they tend to sit in front of a window, the light is streaming behind them. So they need to have at least a small light in front of their faces so that you can see their expression and they don't look like ghosts or zombies.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's quite surprising how many people sit.
Yeah, but people are not aware of what they look like very often. Anyway.
No, definitely good point. So if we go on to the next slide, we can see a summary of those tips. There's lots of text there. I realized maybe a screenshot would help you, and then you feel free to take that and you can revisit those tips as well. So just to ensure that you're creating your best teaching environment so that you're at your best, and taking into account that if you're at your best, well, then you can transmit that to your students and you can also help your students. So, I mean, I remember in online teaching, telling my students, well, why are you sitting down for so many hours? And they said, well, how do I stand up? Well, you're on a laptop. Yes. Do you have books in your room? Yes, of course I have books. Okay, well, or a box, or it doesn't matter. Well, put your laptop on top of your box and stand up. And when they realized something so simple could be done, it was like, oh, wonderful. Yeah, great. Oh, now you have the option, you know, stand up, sit down, whichever. Yeah. Okay. So some useful tips just to make sure that you're at your best. If you're at your best, then you can help others be at your best. Yeah. And this is the same philosophy that is used in an aeroplane as well. If you remember, they do say, unfortunately, if the mask drops down and you're with a child, put your mask on first, then you can help the child. You can't do it the other way around. It's probably a lot more difficult. Same idea here. Yeah, look after yourself, and then you're much better in a much better position to help others. So, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm going to talk about a few of the practicalities of working online. Some of them are the same as in the offline classroom. For example, problems that we can anticipate, you know, may have to do with personality issues. We can have very extroverted students or very shy students, or people who really would love a spotlight just on themselves they will do whatever they can to get that. And you can have problems of mixed language levels, people who are stronger in one language skill and very weak in another, and different learning strategies. So these are problems that overall appear in any kind of classroom. But here we want to maybe concentrate on those as well as the technical knowledge, with the technical issues being a little bit higher on our list, just because of the nature of this webinar. So the basic skill set we're looking for in terms of making sure our learners have is things that we should be able to do ourselves first. If you find an interesting page, can you bookmark it? Do you know a good bookmarking system so that your browser doesn't look like, 58 tabs open, or you can never find any bookmarks and so on? For example, it could be bookmarking and saving your bookmarks on a place like a Padlet, or you could use another service similar to a Padlet, or you could use a notebook like Microsoft OneNote to save your bookmarks. Do you have basic search skills? Do your students have basic search skills? So if you ask them to do a little bit of research to find information about a particular subject, do they know how to search? Do they know how to go to Google and how to put certain, items, Padlet, thank you, Paul. Can they type fast? Sometimes this is a very important thing online, because if you ask students to use the text chat for online responses, and then, they type boom, 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 one letter every half minute, and then there's an agonizing time when everybody's waiting for that sentence to appear in the text chat. Oh my God, that's really terrible. They need to learn how to type faster in the same way. So these are part of the digital literacies that you need to help them with, and maybe show them maybe a place online where they could, or they could practice fast typing, or even, what do we call this?
Touch typing?
Touch typing, yeah, because, when you have your eyes on a screen, your fingers need to have the muscle memory to go to the appropriate keys. Taking screenshots. Sometimes, you ask students, take a screenshot and go to your breakout room. Do they know how to do that? And very simple things like registering in a website, logging in, what happens when you're logged out, or how do you create an ID? How do you create a password? Where do you save your password? These are things that we as teachers may take very much for granted. They're not things that younger learners or teens can take for granted. We think that our teens, they're on their smartphones, but they're just on their smartphones. They don't know much about other apps and about online instruction. They know how to send a TikTok video maybe, or watch it, but they don't know how to participate in a class learning activity or do research online necessarily. Other problems may have to do with connectivity. In many cases, you have learners who are trying to follow your lesson with very poor connectivity on a Wi-Fi, which is 2 rooms away from them. And they don't know a good solution to that. For example, buying a very long Ethernet, like 20 meters. I have a 20 meters Ethernet cord here in case I have connectivity issues, or I want to download big video and stuff. And connecting via Ethernet will make even a weaker connection work much faster, and their voice will not break up, their image will not break up. I think Paul talked about noise and distractions and concentration, so I'm not going to bore you with going into that very much, but the question is, how can we deal with all this? And the answer, the natural answer that most people have is, I'm going to tell them, which is great. But you can very easily become the talking head in your classes, just delivering tutorials. So I would suggest that maybe your roadmap that Paul talked about was maybe beginning before the course, maybe by starting earlier, before the students actually join your class, get them to do some getting to know you activities, things that will get them to meet each other, learn things about each other, find out things in common with each other, find out if there are any common interests and hobbies that they can share with other people, because they need to feel connected to their classmates. If they feel a disconnection, a lack of connection, they're probably not going to collaborate well when the time comes for them to be taught by you online. So getting to know you activities, emails, and also tutorials that you can organize for them to learn how to use the different tools that you have available to you will be a great idea. I think Paul has just put out a great link for different ideas for icebreakers and warmers and fillers in the text chat. If you would like to bookmark this, that'd be great, because it won't come in with the video. It won't be saved in the video. Also, the website that Paul showed you, like the hub that you have, but we also, I'm going to show you maybe another couple of examples if we don't take too long. So some examples of hubs, Paul showed you one, and I'm going to show you maybe another one or two, if I may, by sharing my main screen. And this is the hub that I made for my current Delta Force. So for example, you can see that it has links to their Google Classroom, which is their online classroom where we put in handouts, we put in assignments. This is a learning management system which is free online. You can have your own Google Classroom for every course that you teach. This is a group for their Telegram group where we have very quick communication during lessons. So for example, you see here, if there's a screenshot that we want to share or a quick question the students want to ask, Telegram is very quick. It's like WhatsApp, but the nice thing about it is that, it's not banned in countries where maybe they have to go through a VPN. This is Marisa's Zoom meeting when they have a session with me. This is Angelo's Zoom meeting. This is their our Facebook social group where they meet. This is their wiki, which is another website they have where, for example, this is a website that again is free for everyone. You can create a wiki for free. PBWorks is a great website maker, and you can see that you can have pages and files. And here on our wiki, you can see I've alphabetized our pages, and you can have very simple pages. For example, a page for your B class, or a page for each learner, or a page for assignments, a page for listenings that you want to upload for them to do in between sessions. Google Classroom is also great, and that's another kind of website that you can very easily create. For example, this one was for a class of Train the Trainer course, and here you can see how you can upload their assignments, you can upload input, you can upload materials, you can upload, for example, this one was CPD for trainers, and you can see all the handouts can be there, all the exercises can be there, and in the assignment, you can have an assignment here, and you can say how many people it is assigned to, and so on and so forth. So there are many different sites where you can do this for free. Make them a welcome. I'm just going to go back to no, I'm not going to go back to my presentation. I'm talking to myself and my slides here, which teachers often do, you realize. Yeah, give them a little welcome in video. Introduce your school. Getting to know you is give them an introduction of your school. And here I made a little presentation on eMaze, which is a wonderful online tool, introducing my Delta trainees to their online classes. And I made this presentation for them, which they can, it's very easy. This is our course. This is where we will be working. This is your Adobe Connect classroom. This is an older presentation. And this is what you can do here. You can text chat, you can find the recordings of our meetings. And this is, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to bore you with that because it's got quite a few slides, but it's where you can also introduce the different platforms for your work. You can introduce the tutors. You can introduce anything you want in a presentation where you introduce the school. You can introduce yourself. In this one, this is a classic online activity, particularly useful for online instruction. It's called a 3-2-1. And if you think that I have very expert video skills, I don't. I just put in some photographs into animoto.com. Okay, can you type that in the text chat, maybe, if you could? Where you can just upload some photographs and write in a little bit of text in between and create a miracle of a presentation like this one. So this is sorry, this is very loud. I'm going to play loud. So students getting to know you is quite important because they want to know about their tutor as well. They want to know where you're coming from, maybe what qualifications you have. This is for my trainees who know my qualifications. But your students might want to see what degrees you have. Why not tell them? This is what we do. This is where I'm coming from. These are my hobbies. This is what I do. And maybe you can invite them to do something on their own. Make a little getting to know you activity for maybe the website that you have created for them. Okay. So if you have maybe like a Google Classroom or a wiki or something, they can make a little presentation for themselves. Maybe even with a PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be Animoto. It could be even a Word document where they put in some pictures and photographs of themselves. And getting to know you, as I was talking to Paul earlier, getting to know doesn't have to be like a difficult activity. Getting to know you in class as well is also possible. And in offline classrooms, we say, okay, take this find someone who questionnaire and go around and ask people. So we hope to give you some ideas, maybe. Also, make tutorials. For example, this one says to my trainees how to
verify, put it in twice, and then
it says how to log into their wiki. I mentioned wikis, but it's, it's not like intuitive. Oh, I'll join that wiki and magically it happens. People get confused. Where do I click? Where do I put my email? Where do I put my password? So make a little video, a little tutorial video to help them with that. And this one is a video that I made for how to log in, how to register and that. But you can have many different tutorial videos for how to, for example, download materials, how to upload materials into their website. These are not like, people don't get born with a website in their head. These are things that need to be taught to our learners. Getting to know you activities in an online class, maybe some ideas could be to play some, to give them maybe a little questionnaire for to interview 2 or 3 friends in breakout rooms. I think Paul had another nice idea, and perhaps we can open the floor to you, and if you could share any great ideas you have, we would really love to include them on this slide. Yeah. I'm not going to email the presentation. I'm afraid I'm going to upload. I usually upload my slides on SlideShare, and I will upload the video on YouTube. Yeah.
So some of the getting to know you activities, and obviously by teaching online, and if you're teaching from home, as Marissa said, like many of us are, you've got your students in your house or your flat, so and you're in theirs essentially. So what does that mean? Well, that opens up lots of more possibilities, obviously taking into account what I've previously said. What I very often do is connect on my laptop, and in the first lesson I give students a tour of my flat, and I don't say anything except, this is maybe asking them, what room is this? This is the kitchen, Paul. It's obvious. Yeah, right. Okay, the living room, whatever. But what I tell them to do is, as they're having a look at my flat, is to maybe draw conclusions. I don't know about you, but whenever you visit somebody's house, you are looking, you are taking in what you can see. You're probably judging for good or bad, but you're concluding about them. So what I ask them to do is observe, take some notes possibly, and then breakout rooms, talk about the things that you could conclude about me, good or bad. I don't mind. That's why I'm opening myself up. And you see, what I'm doing there is saying, listen, I'm going to open myself up. I'm going to share my personal space with you, because I would like you to do something similar if you're comfortable doing it. If you're not, that's fine, and I respect that. That's all right. So automatically, from a get to know you activity, students are talking, they're communicating, they're trying, working out a little bit more about the teacher. And then during the course, maybe, I'll have a 10-month course, I come back to that, and students refer back to that and say, oh yeah, Paul, do you remember you showed us the photograph of your 2 brothers, and you said one of the brother lives in London. Yeah, wow. That's from the very first lesson. Then I'll go and get that photograph maybe. Now we could flip that and also then ask students to do the same if they're happy to do that. I don't know about you, but I've had several teachers tell me how they're beginning to get a little bit tired of the same student lifting up their pet to the camera and sticking the camera, the pet in the camera, and say, look at my dog or look at my cat. Now, the first 3 times they do that, it's lovely, it's endearing. And then, after 15 times, it's right, let's carry on with the lesson now. But that shows the motivation they want to share with you. And you can take advantage of those moments. I think it's important. How about you? What do you do? What sort of get to know you activities do you do yourself online? Feel free to add in the chat. It would be good to hear, or to turn on your mic and tell us.
I wanted to, while people are, I think I like this one, view from my window. Yes, Ron, please tell us. I'll write that later. Go on.
Well, first of all, I want to thank both of you for doing this very informative little webinar. I registered and I said, I have to come today. I'm free on Saturday. I'm going to see what Paul and Marissa have to say. Very informative, and would like to invite you both to please use my social media channels to do this once a month. because we teachers need little tutorials like this. So thank you for doing that. I want to answer both of your questions about what do I do? And I have to say that there's two words that I think maybe were mentioned here. And one of them is formative assessment. You know, we tend to think that formative assessment happens after we've been teaching classes. We think that diagnostic happens first, then we teach, and then formative comes. But I have to say that I use formative assessment right from the beginning to onboard my students. I want to know how they use technology. What do they do? And with, you know, of course, and so I make an instructional video and I create a podcast for them so that they can hear that in voice. We don't know what kind of learners we have. We don't know what their tech savvy is. So we got to start on onboarding them through formative ways that they're telling us what they know already before we start the class. So I ask them to, I want to get to know them. Why don't you send us a little voice recorder? And then could you please place that on our Google Doc? Well, they're going to have to get to Google to place it there. And they're going to have to learn. So I'm teaching them already, and they're informing me, it's informative assessment, of how they know how to use technology. So this is really important.
It's a wonderful idea.
And I send them a graphic facilitator on the Google Docs. So if they need some instructions on what I really want for them to say in the voice recorder, I want to see, do they know how to use a graphic facilitator? And I also want to check, you know, just their tech literacy skills. That's what I'm really doing, but without giving them a test. Just it's task-based learning right from the beginning. It's formative learning right from the beginning. And it's helping me as a teacher so that I kind of reduce the affective filters for me, not for them. But, you know, I think that's a lot of your tips are really great. And, you know, we can use Mentimeter too. I create a Mentimeter and let them tell me what they think or what they want. And so I'm doing all of that because I know I need them to know all of those things.
Absolutely.
So that before they start. And, you know, we know basically what we're going to teach through backward design, but we're not going to get them to the end of the class to summative assessment if we can't start with diagnostic and formative right from the start. So that's my suggestion of how I do it. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. I was thinking maybe I should invite you to do a seminar with us next month.
Well, I am going to be in Athens in the summer. I will be there for the Edicast conference being held at the university there in Athens. Maria, I was going to call you up anyway to come visit your school.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing you in Athens.
But definitely I would like to do a
webinar
webinar for you. Yeah, and I want to invite both of you to please do this once a month for teachers. Please use my social media channels. I will definitely share it with, you know, the thousands of teachers that follow me so that you can touch more teachers. I think today was informative and I liked it. Thank you.
This is really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We do have a number of seminars planned ahead. And one of them is going to be, I think our next one is on task-based language teaching. But in some ways, today is not about teaching you about specific tools, although it's great to share them. Like, for example, mentioning Animoto and Mentimeter and other apps like, for example, Flipgrid for making little videos. And to be quite honest, if you wanted to teach all of those tools, you would need a series of sessions, not just one. So today it was done with the assumption that you know some of these tools yourselves as teachers, but with the idea of the fact that you actually, it's not an intuitive knowledge that, you know, students are born with. The tech skills, the digital literacies need to be taught, need to be introduced gradually. And the other point that Ron made that is quite important is that it's not something that you just do before the course or you just do at the beginning of the course. It's something that you need to engage throughout the course, diagnostically, formatively. And in some ways, what my idea is that tech instruction can be part of your curriculum, as Paul said, as part of the CEFR, and it could give you really great input for meaningful and useful language lessons. So for example, in a small short mini lesson that I designed for my trainees and for the students in their teaching practice classes, the volunteer students, how to participate in online lessons. So this is a mini tutorial for our students who come in very innocent. Oh, we have a teacher, the teacher is going to lecture and I'm going to listen and interrupt the teacher anytime I want. It doesn't work like that. Also, interruptions online tend to be a little bit more irritating than interruptions offline for some reason, don't they? Yeah, because, you know, so for example, I'm just going to scroll you through because Paul did that earlier. You will need a laptop, not a mobile phone, need a quiet place. And because this one was for a low-level class, I did it visually, pictorially, rather than with lots of words. So you can introduce a lot of language through this. You need a webcam, you need a notebook, learn to unmute and unmute your microphone, and give them practice doing these things. Don't just say, oh, you need to do this. Okay, everybody turn off your mic. Give them a little bit of drilling practice. Turn it off, turn it on. Turn it on, sing hallelujah. I don't know. You know, but just check that they know how to do it. And
it's a good point. Sorry, Melissa, to interrupt that online interrupting. Is a good point, and I've done it myself. You know, that assuming that just because they are supposedly digital natives that they know all these things, and you can't assume these things. And I mean, I have a 16-year-old son who's always on social media, but then when it comes to the most basic things, I mean, I discovered a couple of years ago the way he was turning off his computer, and
turn it off.
He wouldn't shut it down. He would just press the button. He was like, don't do that. It's not, you know, it's like, and you think, well, why wouldn't you know that? And at the end of the day, it's like anything in life. Well, if nobody told me how to do it properly, how would you expect me to know? You know, and I think that's
exactly. And
important.
the other thing that you both said, both you and Ron, is that things have to evolve during the course as well. So obviously, at the start of your course, you don't want to use a new tech tool every other session. You need to make a selection of what are you going to be your staples during a course and use those, but reminders and refreshers are always going to be useful. So during the course, maybe you will do some tutorials on the first days of classes. For example, like the one I showed you earlier, how to log into your wiki or into your Google Classroom or whatever website you're using. In our case, we're also using Moodle, we're using Telegram. All these are, you know, they're not intuitive for everyone. Give them some tips. For example, when you're in breakout rooms and you're working in pairs or groups, download the materials shared by the teacher and, you know, show them how to download the materials, to display that. Or take a screenshot and take it to the breakout rooms. And just having them that learn to share your screen is very easy. Is not enough. You need to give them practice on doing this. So allow practice time and show them, for example, with my class, I show them how to do it on a Mac. Press Shift Control. These are things you don't know intuitively unless someone tells you. Or you don't know how to use your print screen tool on older Windows versions. Most of my trainees don't know that, so not even the learners know this. And in newer Windows versions, you have the snipping tool, but not everybody knows how to use that. So my suggestion is that you should make training the focus of one or more lessons. It's a language lesson, you know, it generates language from the learners. Like, for example, how to behave during pair or group work in breakout rooms. This is a lesson. This could be a lesson. And it could be started with something like this. In a breakout room, brainstorm ideas about some of the do's and don'ts. What should you do? Okay. And you can get them in a group or individually, whatever you like, and to brainstorm ideas and bring them back. And then you might want, this is what you want them to learn eventually. And I can give you a lecture about that, but probably as a teacher, I would create an activity out of these ideas. Participate, follow instructions, get to the activity or task quickly, offer to take notes, allow other people to talk, avoid long monologues, interminable. Take notes, copy them, be ready to share your ideas, ask for help. So what would you do with this? What kind of activity might you design? Would you
Or
design?
possibly one of them. I mean, it could, because you could design different activity for each one. I wonder what it'd be interesting to hear ideas of how you could focus on maybe one of these options, no?
I mean, the simplest activity that I can think of, you could turn these into a series of true and false statements, and you can see if they agree. You know, never participate, wait for others to talk. Would they agree or disagree with that? And that,
Well, I think what I see there is those could be learning outcomes and then actually create a task to get to those learning outcomes. That's what I see there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the idea. So I mean, maybe for the last one, I might say, right, guys, you are going to talk through, and then after that, you're going to so, and then you have to do that. Okay. So do you understand? And now they have to ask me for help because they're confused.
yeah, they are actually. And they are followed, they are based, everyone, on politeness rules in English. And this is a subject that some of you that are familiar with discourse analysis and who know how talk is regulated amongst civilized individuals, not kind of, oh, you're an idiot, you're wrong. But, you know, in order to participate in a learning activity, you need to be able to regulate your verbal behavior and to understand that everyone has a right to their opinion. You're not going to always agree with everyone, but you have to be polite. That everyone's ideas have some value. And that time is for everyone, not just some people. Stick to the subject, don't go offline, you know, on different tangents, and make other people feel that you value them and you value their opinions, and avoid interacting. Again, these are standard politeness rules, you know, the maximal politeness in English, you know, as described by John Rubin or Jeffrey Leach or whatever, if you're interested. And they can be taught. For example,
I think what you're looking at here also is, if you really look at that, it's a list of the rules for dialogic learning and teaching.
Yeah.
So, you know, we expect people to be polite, but what I see there is really truly a simplified list of dialogic learning and teaching. Exactly, that's what, you know, I tell them, this is how I'm going to teach, this is how I want you to learn. And, you know, yes, we need to be polite, but that's just a great overview of dialogic learning and teaching.
exactly. And you know, it talks about time, it talks about values, it talks about, you know, human interaction, it talks about respect. Yeah. So it's how we operate in groups, how we operate in society. Because if you break these rules, you know, you can't communicate. And
Mm.
not all our learners will be familiar with this kind of setup.
Now, Marissa, those rules do not apply in a pub.
No, they do not apply on television shows in Greece. Everybody interrupts everybody else. Everybody thinks everybody else is an idiot by themselves. You know, there are environments in which these rules will not be maintained, not be followed. But as teachers of a language that has these rules, we have to make them clear to our learners. If they don't want to use them in their own language, that's their prerogative and their absolute right. But in our class, they need to follow them. And they can follow the basis of a number of lessons, not just one. For example, you can make cards out of them, you know, and each student could pick up a card and say, you know, you have to disagree with everything everybody else says. But first of all, you have to value their opinion. You know, there's lots of things you can do with them. I don't want to bore you with lesson ideas, but these are important matters. Other important stuff, small stuff, but important as well. Type fast, you know, learn to type faster, because it's really very tiring to just wait for a sentence that lasts forever. Use the chat well, avoid long responses, but also on the part of the teachers, don't ask questions that will generate very long responses. Ask simple ones. Familiarize your students with the fact that there are public and private messages. And also it's great that you can use private messaging as well, because you can correct a learner very tactfully and very non-judgmentally, because very often students feel threatened by certain types of correction, particularly, you know, overt kind of, that was wrong, you know, so kind of thing. But you could say, you know, you could have said that in a different way to make your meaning clearer. The next, and I think, you know, we're coming close to the end of our session, is teach them some research skills. And research doesn't mean only big time research. It means very easy type of research. I don't know what you've shared, Ron, but
what I put in there is, I think it's just more of it's a graphic facilitator that we as teachers should be giving our students at the beginning and telling them through icons of what we're going to use, and let them see it, and I put that on my instructional video and walk them through it before the class. I send it to them so that they know exactly what's going to come, what I expect them to learn, and I give them 2 weeks to, you know, get ready. So that's that other formative way. If they have any questions, they can ask me, but I'm trying to onboard them. I don't want to use my online class time to be teaching them how to do that.
No, but
Because
I think it's a great menu, however. It's a great
It's a good point, in the sense that we were talking about mapping the journey, and it's kind of what do you do when you map a journey? Well, you have a destination, and if you don't tell the student what that destination is, or at least how you're going to get there, and I think what you're, by doing this, by sharing this list, Ron, is you're saying these are the forms of transport essentially that we're going to use while on the journey. You know, and you need to know how these work in order to make the most of the learning journey.
I have one for every class. I create different ones. I got I forgot the name of the teacher, but he is the president of IATEFL in Hungary. And he had about 120 icons and on a document that he shared with us. And I was like, oh God, that is so wonderful, because I just used that and I pasted on this, and I used PowerPoint and put them all there, put them in some kind of order, and it's done in about 15 minutes. And, you know, then I just take a screenshot of it and then send it to the students.
I think also, as I am looking at your image and thinking of what the last few slides that I'm going to be talking about which is researching, that there are things that are very kind of small time, like, you know, upload something, download something, copy and paste something. This is small time stuff. This is lower order skills, but research skills, you know, participate in a discussion on Moodle. That's higher order thinking. So perhaps for those of you who are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy of objectives, of education objectives, there are some great presentations and materials out there online that you can see how different types of applications and digital tools correlate to different levels of higher order thinking and lower order thinking. So this is something for you to pursue, and perhaps we could do that in a future seminar.
The hots and the lots.
The hots and the lots. So I generally want to give my students the hots, but I've got to give them some lots first also.
Yeah, we got to start somewhere.
Yes. So when do you ask them to do something, to find some information, give them a little tutorial or a lesson. And I'm going to play you just a couple of minutes of a lesson from a teacher who I kind of motivated to do this. And he did a lesson for our intermediate learners on how to use the COCO, which is a contemporary something of contemporary English, American English. So it's a great body of language, a great language corpus, which you can research. And he gave them a lesson which was focusing on collocations. He wanted them to learn how to look at a work and see which words does it collocate with, because this knowledge is not intuitive to us. And so he taught them how to use a collocation sampler. And I want to take you to a page.
But to distinguish what is a collocation. Let's watch this 3-minute video, please.
So he used the video
Can you
tutorial.
hear it?
Not yet. Not yet.
Can you hear it?
No, but we can hear some like it if it's
the word that comes after the word analysis. So we know it's going to be analysis and someone here. So we just click on one to the right of this arc square. This arc square represents the word, so analysis. And we want to know what word most commonly comes after analysis. So click on one and click on find collocations. Okay, so we have this list of different collocations of this for this word analysis. And if we look at number one, we find the word of, and we can see the frequency or the number of times that of.
So this is the video, the part of the lesson in which he introduces them to a corpus analysis tool online, so that they can have that tool available to them if they encounter dictionary and different vocabulary items in a text or something, or they want to use them, they could check what other words do they go with. And it was part of building up their vocabulary and having them identify collocations and so on. So he incorporated the training, the tutorial, which he found on YouTube, into his lesson on teaching the learners how to spot good collocations. His job as a teacher was not just to find any old video. Igor found the best video that his intermediate class could follow. So that's your job. You know, there's hundreds of tutorials out there on the web. Not all of them will be suitable for your learners. And not all of them will be something you can show to your learners. So if you, for example, find something which is very complex, you might have to create a small tutorial on your own. And this is one that I created to teach my learners how to collaborate using Google Docs. And I taught them how to use Google Docs in 8 minutes. So I taught them, but it's something that I did very quickly, okay? And I don't want to play the whole thing, but you can see here somewhere that I am in Google Docs and I'm getting, I can get them to, these are the prompts that I have given them, and I'm telling them how to use the prompts to write the story. And I'm giving them a beginning to the story. The story happened when I was 5. So they have to use pickaxe and something and some jewels or whatever. It was just a younger class. It was a pirate story, in fact. And tell them, give them the instructions in my own language that they could understand. Later, with another class, I had a lot of fun creating a lot of video with a colleague, one of my trainees, on how to use Etherpad for collaborative writing, which is a great tool.
Hello, I'm going to introduce you to an alternative online collaborative writing tool, which has been around for a very long time and was originally created by Google. It was stopped by Google. It was taken up by other people. And also it has.
Okay, so here is what is Etherpad is doing. I am writing along with 2 other people, and everything I write is marked in blue. Everything they write, Olga is writing, is in pink. And then Paula came in later, another trainee of mine, and everything she added to the writing was marked in green. If I corrected something or Olga corrected something, it was marked in a different color. I mean, unless I give them a demonstration like that, how are they going to know how to collaborate on a document like this? So make your own tutorials, but how to make those tutorials is maybe the final question. Do you know of any tools or online applications where you can make a little video of the screen? What do you use? There are many screencasting programs that you can use.
Can I jump in there and say that I have one, and it is ChatGPT or UChat. When I'm dealing with collocations, I just no longer do it. I tell them, you know what, we're going to have to find some collocations for the verb run. Could you please ask ChatGPT? And they can do it online, live. They share their screens. We can see it. I asked ChatGPT or UChat, please put it in alphabetical order, and they can see it.
Wonderful.
And it's right there in front of me. In fact, I just did it as you were speaking. Or if I need a noun collocations, I can ask it, put it into, like I put in the word rain, and it said pouring rain, fine rain, gentle rain, light rain, patchy rain. You know, I can ask it for 10, 20 words. It's a great way to do it online with your students. You don't waste any time, but you know, that's tech savvy and keeping up with the times. We have to learn how to integrate these chat programs into our learning for productive writing and speaking.
Great.
So that's.
I'm not very familiar with ChatGPT yet. Maybe you should do me a tutorial, please.
Well, I have one on my Facebook site you could use. But you know, what I like, because it's sometimes hard to get into ChatGPT, it's so busy. You know, there is another search engine called YOU. And they have a built-in, it's the competitor of Google in a way, but it is the best way to get into chat very quickly. You don't have to sign in. The only thing is that you got to do that live, because they don't allow you to save all of that unless you take a screenshot.
Is that on your tutorial?
Well, no, I actually have tutorials for ChatGPT. But, you know, for me, it just seemed like, wow, you know, You is there. I started using You about 3 months ago. And I just decided I'm going to start using that in class instead of ChatGPT when I'm working with things like, you know, building vocabulary, collocations, idioms, because it's live. it's easier to get into. And like I said, you don't have to sign in. So I can
think
just
there are-
always,
There's a
if,
good,
Paul, if you could just put in you as the search engine, you.com, you can
yep,
see
it's
how
in the
that
chat at the moment.
If
Yeah,
you put it
brilliant.
in the chat, yeah.
Yeah, and you actually do
Go on.
really,
You see it?
you see
Yep.
there, and you can just put in a code like collocation. So you put collocations in there, Paul. And then it's going to give you an answer to it really quick live. It should pop up. Click chat up there on the top, chat
Yeah.
to the, yeah, where it says all chat, images, videos, right to up, more up, to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. You're on there, it says chat. And then you can ask it and say collocations,
I
or
see.
and then you just ask it a question. You could ask something like I asked it, what words collocate with the verb run?
This is a search engine. Oh, I've just disappeared. Search engine, which is useful. And I think Google have tried to
Here you
create
are.
a.
It's giving me answers.
And you see what's popping up. I don't need a dictionary. I don't need ChatGPT. I can ask it to alphabetize them. You know, it's just great for online learning. It expedites things, facilitates things. And I'm reaching my goal because I need to get them to learn how to use some of these things. And, or, you know, like if I put in rain, I was actually doing class on adjectives and I needed them to, you know, create, and I created a bunch of blanks on purpose. I asked GPT to create a fill in the blank lesson for me. And then with the adjectives missing, and the students get to see, because they have to ask you to do it. And you can see there's so many, there's a story that needs to be told, and students get a choice because, you know, there's not always a right or wrong answer to some adjectives. And so it's, you know, it's voice and choice, it's technology, it's vocabulary, it's live, it's online, so many factors built into it. But I definitely believe that that's a great way, a tool to use that we can get them to do a lot of things at once.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've saved it and I'll explore it. There are collocation dictionaries that Paul has put in, and there are other places where you can find easy collocations. This one is for anyone. This is just an example. I use Screencast-O-Matic to make small videos, screencasts and that. And you know, a lot of my content is things, you know, I screencast Paul, I screencast my seminars, I screencast sometimes things like marking assignments. Like, for example, here you can see there is a recording with marks on assignments that says this was a mistake and that was a mistake. And it's great. It's very easy to make a tutorial with something with this tool. And you can save it in here, or you can upload it to YouTube. There are other great screencasting programs that you can use, such as Jing.com. I think it's part of, I don't know, does anybody else use any particular screencasting tool that you favor? I think you know, creating a video on your iPhone or a smartphone is also a good way to create a small tutorial in some cases if you don't have any other tools available. But essentially,
It's the best, Maria. It's the best one. I just put a tripod in front of me and start speaking.
yeah,
That,
I mean,
you know,
exactly. It's very easy to use. It's very handy. And if it's a good phone, the picture is really good as well. You know, the images are quite good. It looks very professional.
follow Paul's rule and look nice when you're doing it. make sure that you're dressed nice, okay? Not in pajamas.
Well,
So-
at least from the top up, you should what
Yeah.
you're wearing.
Yeah, you don't want to know what I'm wearing at the bottom. I'm wearing my warm, fluffy socks. So thank you very much. We've come to the end of the presentation. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can send me an email, as I said earlier, either on my school email or just the very long Greek name, marisakonstantinides.gmail.com. And if anybody wants to come up with their video on and ask questions or have a wee chat, we would love to have you up here. Please join us. Ron, thank you very much for your really great ideas in this seminar. I love them. I notice you have a virtual environment as well. Shall I put on my wings?
Well, that's real though.
Oh, that's real.
Yeah, I have it on, I took a picture of my wall. It's actually on the other side, but my
Oh,
video
I
is facing this
see.
side.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Anybody
But
else?
I would like to say that before I go, I invite both of you, please do this once a month, teachers just talking about exchanging ideas. Would love to come if we could plan it together. That's why I came. I didn't know really what it was going to be, but now I see that it's something great. Maria, I want to thank you and Paul again one more time. Please do it again.
Yeah, thank
I
you for
will
your
be glad to
contribution.
share it and help you to build this group if you do it, because it's a great way for us as teachers, me at my old age, to be sharing with younger teachers, all the things we have to know to, be good in the classroom and be good with our students.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
Yeah, good
Thank you
point.
so much.
I want to say goodbye to both of you.
Bye. Thank you.
And just drop me a line, but definitely do it again.
Thanks, we will. It's not a promise, it's a threat. We'll do it every month. Great, thank you for coming and coming out and talking to us. Anybody else who would like to jump up and show themselves?
Please feel
on
free
video?
feel free to ask any of the questions you
Don't be
have.
shy. Most people have left, but there are some people who are still here. Maybe they have some questions. Would you like to come up on video? Gloriana, Niusha, Silvina, Joan, Maria, Elpida. No? Okay, so
Thank you very much.
you look very, oh, that's nice. Thank you so much. I really need to download this stuff. So much for coming in here. We appreciate your joining us. We will post, and for anyone interested, let me just share my YouTube channel, which is where I will post the recording of this video. Just 1 minute. Here you are. If you check, the video will appear under webinar recordings. There is a category, there's a playlist that has webinar recordings, and there are some other recordings in there as well for those interested. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye. Bye, and thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Have a great day or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are.